Okay, so we are live here, and I'm Angelo John Lewis, my colleague Wendy Williams, and I'm going to lead us in a very, very brief attunement here. Wherever you are in the world, I invite you to get in touch with yourself and notice your breathing. Experience it coming in, experience it going out. Experience the fact that you are yourself a community and you are a part of many communities, including the community of ancestors, community of relatives, community of people in the world during this extraordinarily challenged time. And please just breathe all of them into your heart. And thank you.
Thank you.
So Wendy, we're here to talk about sacred community in the time of COVID-19. And I guess just to bring it about, let me just say two things, and I'll let you hear. I'd like to hear what you have to say. You know, a lot of the people that I know in this day and age, they don't find community in the places that perhaps our parents did. They don't go to church, for example. And even if they did, they can't go now in any event. So I think the project of building sacred community is maybe a little bit more challenging now than it might have been in other times, you know. And let me just note one particular issue that I think is especially challenging. We're fortunate enough to be talking on this online community forum. A lot of people don't have internet access, you know. They don't have some of the things that maybe we take for granted. And especially in a challenging time, it's almost like you can go in two different directions. You can go to a kind of a very narrow thing where you like hoard toilet paper or something, or you find some way to reach out to your sister or brother and try to help them along. So I guess what I want to discuss with you is, you know, what are your thoughts about the project of building sacred community in this time? And then maybe we could get to some examples of some things that we can do. Let me start with, you know, what thoughts do you have in general about this time and the importance of building community?
Well, it's really amazing how the virus has leveled the playing field for everybody. And we have a global reset button, a pause button that has been pushed. And people have stopped focusing on the little small petty things that used to divide us. And what is naturally coming out of people is this strong desire for community because we're now being isolated. So it's really heartwarming to see all around the world how people are creating community and connection and inclusivity, really, at all levels of the socioeconomic status. So, like you said, for us, we're privileged. We have a home, we have heat, we have electricity, we have an internet connection, and we have computers that allow it all to happen. Great, we're in the US. For most of the people on the planet, they don't have the privilege of all of these things. And I love seeing what people are doing that may not even have a phone to use, let alone an internet connection. So we see in all kinds of places in Italy where their homes are built around a square. People at multiple levels of these apartment buildings will hang out on their patios and open their windows and play music together, sing together, or simply leave the windows open so people that are alone can hear the activities of the family, which is a beautiful way of creating community without depending on technology. The other thing I've seen is I have a friend that lives in Scotland, and she said she went to one of the major cities and there were no homeless people. So our governments are taking care of problems like that they've been ignoring for years, for decades, and how little time it took to take care of that problem. No homeless people in some cities in Europe. It's astounding. And how many decades have that problem just been hanging out there? And now it's being addressed with the least advantaged people in society. Even in San Francisco, I read an article just yesterday that the mayor is renting entire hotels in addition to camper vans so that people that are homeless and have the virus can be quarantined and cared for in an isolated way, but also in community, one place where caretakers can reach them all. So there's all kinds of ways to connect that doesn't involve the tools of the privileged, like what we're using now. Just reaching out to people, even choosing to write a letter to relatives you haven't spoken to in a long time or connected with would be a beautiful way to connect. That would be welcoming. People are still receiving mail. And you don't have to go to the post office if you already have a stamp. Just put it in your mailbox and the mailman will send it on its way.
You know, it seems to me there's a choice point here that people can make. You know, we can choose to like live whatever our bubble is. And the classic example I see is that, you know, somebody goes to Costco or something like that, and they pile up their shopping cart with like, you know, 24, you know, mounds of toilet paper just for them. So they'll have the cleanest a-hole, you know, when they go to meet their maker. So that's a kind of like a contracted response. You know, I'm going to be okay, you know? And of course, that's an illusion because they're connected to everybody else. And maybe that will exist for the time that their stash of toilet paper exists, but eventually it'll disappear and they'll realize they're just like everybody else. And that person on the street isn't that much different from them at the end of the day than they are. So that's one choice, a choice of contraction. And then there's a choice of expansion. You know, so I want to be clear about what I mean about community in general and sacred community. When I use the word spiritual, which I try not to these days because it's so loaded, what I mean is simply the sense that you have that you're connected to everything and everybody without any kind of barriers. It's just a natural feeling that many people have, whether they call themselves Christian or Buddhist or Jain or atheist even. They have this sort of sense that they're connected. That's what I mean when I talk about spiritual. And the issue today is that a lot of the institutions that we've relied on for ages, they don't work too well anymore. You know, most people in my circle, they don't go to a church, for example. It doesn't matter whether they're the coronavirus or not. They just aren't feeling it there anymore. They don't. These are kind of like old age relics to them. At the same time, they have the same need for community as people have always had, you know? So the main issue is this issue of separation, is this illusion of separation that I see, that I'm different than you and you're different than me and we're different. There's never the twain can meet, you know, and embedded in that is the sense of hierarchy or dominance and subordinates, where I'm better than such and such a person. And that's an illusion. And to some extent, if that's what we've been kind of sheltering ourselves for many years, for our whole lifetimes, it's not that necessarily easy to do so, unless there's a tragedy that happens, unfortunately, where we have to realize that we share in the same planet, you know? Now, when you and I in our conversation before that, you talked about some very simple ways to kind of like build community in a stressful time. And I wonder if you can articulate some of those.
Yeah, I think we have an opportunity to reach out and connect with people that we normally would not connect with. So I think you mentioned earlier in our previous conversation, family members that you may not get along with. You know, now is the time to set aside petty squabbles and issues. And we have the opportunity to stand in a place of deep appreciation for what we have. Because right now, our freedom of movement has been taken away. And we're doing it not so much for the majority of people that will easily survive contracting the virus, but we're doing it out of a sense of care for others that are more vulnerable. And that's not just people that might die from the virus, it's people who might get hit by a car or have a heart attack or an appendix that breaks and they need to go to the hospital. And, you know, if we're not caring for each other and the hospitals are overwhelmed, any number of issues can prevent care and cause death in circumstances where that normally wouldn't happen simply because our health systems are overloaded. So this choosing to be in isolation is an act of community, for one. You're demonstrating I'm willing to sacrifice to care for others, which I think is really, really important. If you go to the grocery store and you run across a homeless person, every city has dealt with the homeless issue. Some of the homeless people have no idea that the cities now have places for them to go that they didn't have before. Maybe you want to share that information. Or you could do something as simple as when you leave the house to go to the pharmacy or the grocery store, bring a couple little folded notes with you and hand them to somebody that gives them an encouraging word, or get on the phone and make a phone call. Those are some low-tech, easy-to-do things that don't cost a lot of money and don't require privilege in order to create a connection which builds community.
That's beautiful. And you've gotten us started, because I was thinking as you were talking, if you and I could come up with like 10 ways to create sacred community, you come up with 2. You talk about, you see a homeless person, give them some information, say, or maybe you give them some notes or something, let them know what's available in their neighborhood that they might not have known about. Another thing we talked about, this would be number 2, is that you could just make a phone call to a family member or a shut-in.
That's number 3.
That number 3? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, family member shut-in, right? Right.
Yes. So
cheating.
handing so handing out notes is one to the homeless people, and actually speaking to a person you normally wouldn't connect to by sharing information. That's 2. And then making the phone call. 3.
One that I've always liked, and you and I talked about this before, it's like a kind of a meditation technique. You know, I like to think of this like it's like from the inside out. You have your community among all the things that are happening in yourself, you know, your thoughts, your mentality, your emotional self. That's one community. So you're taking care of that by maybe eating well, for example, getting your exercise, even if you have to stay inside. Then you've got, you know, your family, you know, your nuclear family or your whatever family, whatever that means to you. Then you have people that are somewhat outside of that circle, maybe people that you've been estranged with. Then you have the world. You know, you have you know, people that are not in a very good circumstance. So one of the things I like to do sometimes when I do my meditation is that I go through those kind of levels and to do what I can to extend caring to all of the cells that I'm a part, all the communities that I'm a member. That's 4.
That's beautiful. You know, I'm going to get really spiritual here.
All right.
And I'm going to get really spiritual. I see the world through energy eyes, and energy and spirit are synonymous in how I'm using those 2 words. I believe everything is energy, which was proven by Einstein. And what we know is that our thought creates energy that acts. Our thoughts have direct physical effects. I think the easiest way to understand that is the placebo effect. We know that if people believe something, they can completely change the physical health of their own bodies. We also have scientific proof that an attitude that a teacher holds towards a certain student can directly affect how well that student performs in school. Obviously, behaviors are included in that, but even just the attitude, if the behaviors are the same, makes an effect. So we have scientific proof that even our own thoughts affect things around us. They affect ourselves and they affect other people. So choosing to send goodwill, like you mentioned, with the Buddhist metta loving kindness exercise / meditation. Choosing to do that more often as a supportive measure instead of a contributing negativity is a way of being connected, understanding your impact, and building community by sharing goodwill.
That's beautiful. That's number 5. We got 5 more to go. So you're going all spiritual on me. I'm going to go. I don't know how spiritual this is, but I live in New Jersey, right? The land that I live in, the land that I'm living, that my house is built on, that my whole community is built on. Hundreds of years ago, the Lenape people lived here. They roamed. And you could make a case. It's very literally true that their spirits are buried everywhere around me. I'll take a walk, and their spirits are there. So, I mean, our community is not just people that are physically with us. It's people that are in the land that we live in. And I think a lot of millennial people, when I go to their events, one of the first things they'll do is that they'll acknowledge the land that they've lived on. And so that might give some peace to the spirits that have been buried there. So to include them in our thoughts, to use that's another thing that we can do. That'll be number 6 in terms of building the sacred community. We're on a roll now.
Yeah, write a letter to a friend or a family member, or maybe even someone you admire or are thinking about, and allow them to receive something very special that's kind of left our culture in the mail. When people are stuck in their homes now, receiving something personal and handwritten in the mail would be a really beautiful way to connect and create community.
Another way is, playing it forward in a certain sense. So a simple example is when you go through like a kind of a toll booth and you have to pay your toll. Now, nowadays, people have these chips, which make this impossible. But let's say you don't have a chip. So you could pay the next person's thing. So, that, and people, like, they get there, they're, wow, this is great. So-and-so did that beautiful, whatever. And you're creating a sense of, you're playing it forward, let's say.
Absolutely. I heard of one young woman who was in her 20s. She printed up flyers at home and she started passing them around in her neighborhood, in the community, with her phone number on it, so that if you were completely isolated and alone in your home, you had someone to call to talk to, which I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to extend that by saying that, so I'm going to put out, if people want coaching, I'm going to set a time for that, no charge. Just sign up on my little Acuity scheduling page. I'll talk to you a little bit, and hopefully that will help. That's number 8. We're on a roll now. We got 2 more.
2 more. So one of the things that has happened with my village, which is a circle of friends that I've known for about 35 years, we decided to have Friday happy hour. So we're having virtual meetings just like this, using the same technology of Zoom, and we all have a drink, not necessarily alcohol, it could be anything, and we have community on video. And we play games together, and we tell stories, and we sing, and we laugh, and we connect. And it's pretty fun. We're going to be doing it every week. So that's another thing people can do.
Yeah, and another one is just to build on that is that we have this wonderful Zoom technology. I see lots of people that are opening it up for. I'm part of the improvisation community, so
Mhm.
they're opening it up for like, every Friday. They'll do like a happy hour or some sort of event. So it's something that everybody can offer, so that we engage actively in this process of building sacred community.
Yeah, yeah.
So we came up with 10. Very
Just like
easily
that.
without even thinking. And we'd love to have your thoughts put in the chat, please, as to ways that, you can create sacred community or ways that you have, things that you see other people doing. And let's just keep this going.
And if you like some of the ideas and you do them, let us know on the page or in the group for the Sacred Inclusion Network. If you've taken one of these ideas and you started implementing it, let us know. Leave a comment, mention us, let us know what you're doing, what works, and how it feels. We'd love to know your stories.
And we're here every Tuesday at this time. I don't remember what time this is. Depends on where you are in the world. It's different, But
Usually it's 11:15 a.m. Pacific and 1:15 p.m. Eastern.
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, and I can't do the math for England and Singapore and all these other places. But anyway, do connect with us. You can find us on our Facebook page, our group, or our website, sacredinclusion.com. Everybody stay safe. Thank you for being part of our community. Bye-bye.
Yes. Ciao.